All right, I think we're live.
Just waiting to cool down a little.
Hey, hey,
Hi.
make sure we got everything going here. Look at that. We are live for Triple T number 191. Man, these numbers just keep blowing my mind. Here we are, August
Bad.
26th, 2025. My name is
Yeah.
TJ Zebel. I call myself a professional problem solver, but I always follow that up with no, I don't know everything. I just have a unique way of asking people questions and helping them get through challenges and blockages and belief systems and all of the above. Welcome, welcome. Let's see, I am feeling out of practice here. Normally I've got my little note of things to do, but we are live on YouTube, and this is where I would normally say, hi, Mom. So this time I'm going to be, hi, Mom.
Hi.
And we got Dave joining us here. So here we are live from Minnesota. I'm going to be flying home tomorrow. So next week you'll be seeing me in my usual setting. What else? We got a website. Love for you guys to check out. That is thetswb.com, the tall skinny white boy.com. On there you'll find out a few things about what I do. I am so blessed and privileged to be able to help people with things like depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, grief. Still doing a lot of relationship work. So if you know somebody that's looking to find their last partner, have them get a hold of me and help you with public speaking, among many other things. Work with athletes from beginner up to the pro level. I've also been doing some corporate coaching, business coaching. So, a little bit of everything. I like to keep it that way because that keeps it interesting for me. Okay, you guys help me out. What am I missing here?
Your tie.
Yes,
Tie of the week.
yes, and
And if anything fun and exciting
that's
happens.
coming up next. Cool. See, that's why I've got to try, because I've been gone for 2 weeks. Mom will let you know that, or verify, I've been running full throttle the whole time I've been up here. So, the tie, for those of you who are wondering what's with the tie. First Triple T of 24, I decided that I was going to show off my tie, my extension, rewind, my extensive tie collection, and wore a different tie every week for over a year. This is one of my favorites. This is old trusty. This is my favorite go-to travel tie. I wear this every time I travel. The amount of compliments I get on this tie, incredible. Everybody seems to like a little poo, makes them smile, as long as it's the right poo and you wear it the right way. On that note, but on with the rest of the show. Who's got something cool and awesome to share that from the last time we were here together? Anybody? Lenora.
I am very excited to share that. I believe I mentioned it here a couple of weeks ago. I am one of the keynote speakers at the Mid-America Conference, which is very exciting. And it's October 17th through the 19th in Chicago. For anybody who's wanting to come join, I am speaking along with Rich Guzzi, Chase Hughes, and Dr. Richard Bandler. And today, in case you're wondering, there's 50 days exactly till I fly out. And I have my keynote all locked in. So I'm very excited. It is a different process every single time I do what I consider a step up in my speaking. So very different than preparing for TEDx.
Yes, very different. Very cool. Super proud of you.
Thanks. I'm very excited.
Anybody else got anything they want to share before we get rolling? Yes, no, maybe so. Well then, I guess it's time to roll out the topics. Actually, I know one step I forgot. For those of you that are new to Triple T, watching for the first time or watching the recording, the way Triple T works, it's a 2-hour show. The first hour, I do my best to go through at least 3 topics. And then second hour shows up, and that's when things switch around a little bit, and it's open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call can bring up a topic or ask a question. And because I like to learn as well, I allow everybody on the call to answer first. And if I feel that there's anything additional that I can add to it, that's when I put in my 2 centavos. So, those of you on the call, especially those that have been on Triple T for a while, you know what that means. You can chit-chat in the private chat room and decide who gets to go first. You've got an hour, or almost an hour. But now it's time for the topics of the night. Tonight's topics are profits and profits, 3 words and 3 letters, and hometown. Diving into profits and profits. Who knows who recognizes the saying, you can't be a prophet in your own land?
I did. And now when you say it that way, I thought initially you meant profit and profit as in money and money. So that one makes much more sense now.
Okay. So have you heard the phrase, can't be a prophet in your own land?
You haven't heard that, Mark? Oh, wow.
Ooh.
I know.
There's a lot of different ways that this one has been used, explained, all the above. And it comes down to when you get to be so well known, sometimes it's hard to try to be seen as the new leader or the new person with the information, or you get written off because, well, yeah, there they go again. And one of the most common areas where it happens, parenting little humans. And you tell the little humans this bit of knowledge over and over and over and over, and then they go over to their best friend's house. And they come back in the house going, oh my gosh, you know what Johnny's dad just told me? Blah, 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 blah. And you go, yeah, that's what I've been telling you for like the last 8 years. Wait, no. Yes, when I said da, 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 that's what I meant. Well, he just said it different. And that reply is true enough to be true. Even if he said the exact same words, he said it different. It landed different. It came from another source. Why is it that some people have to hear the same lesson from 4 or 5 different teachers? They have different knowledge of who they are, different perspectives on their background, different perspectives on their knowledge level. Mark.
Is that a form of trance logic?
What do you think?
Might be, because sometimes I'll tell parents, I'll say, yeah, I'm going to tell your kid all the same things you are, but because I'm saying it, it'll sink in.
Yes.
I just wondered if that was a form of trance logic.
Can't be a prophet in your own land. Which is also the same reason you'll find a number of large companies, when they want to increase profits or roll out new ideas, who do they have deliver the information? They'll bring in somebody new. We've got Mr. Know-It-All from company XYZ. We've told them everything they're supposed to say. Okay, we didn't tell you that part. But we hyped them up as the top official of knowledge in this department. And they're going to come in here and they're going to tell you everything that we were prepared to tell you. But because they are from a different area, different company, and you don't know their background, you will accept their suggestions and their information quicker. The other part, and why this is called profits, P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S, and profits, monetary, it's the reason why I offer corporate coaching. Sometimes you need somebody from the outside of the woods to come in and see patterns that you can't. Many, many times one of the things that I've went over with my clients is, if you woke up tomorrow and walked into your top competitor's business and could instantly know their business as intimately as you know yours, what would you notice that they could improve on to make it even scarier for you? Great reaction, Nora. Yeah, even scarier. It's your top competitor.
Oh, okay.
And if you walked in and looked at what they're doing, what might they be able to do tomorrow to make them even stronger against your weaknesses? And when I ask that, suddenly they have a more intimate look at their weaknesses, because they are analyzing what is the potential of their top competitor. What could their top competitor figure out before they do that would allow their top competitor to take advantage of their weaknesses?
I don't think I ever thought about it that way.
I get that reaction. Another place that I do this as well, in the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry is extremely competitive. And oftentimes, the mistake that a lot of the managers and owners make is they think that it's just about the food. Well, the food's got to be good. Yeah, that's one part of it. But what is it? Why do people go out to eat? Pretty much every domicile now has some type of cooking apparatus, down to a toaster and a microwave. The main reason people go out to eat is for the experience. So what is it that can separate one restaurant from another if they both serve the same food?
Service.
That's part of the experience.
Hmm.
The challenge then becomes, are you a prophet in your own land?
Mhm.
Have you been in the industry long enough or too long to where, oh, it's always worked this way, and we've been our the third generation family running this place, and we're still alive, and so we're doing something good. Yes, you're still alive. But will you be next year or 5 years from now? How will you remain relevant? If somebody sees that you've been in business for 30 years, but you've become complacent, what's going to stop them from analyzing your business and coming up with just a little tweak on the menu and a much bigger tweak on the experience? And there's something about the newness. That's the new person, the new kid in town. Eagles had a great song about it. And it's one of my fun little trivia questions is, what was the name of the new kid in town? Johnny Come Lately, the new kid in town. He was not a prophet from the land. He was the new one, the new exciting one. But eventually, he didn't have enough to offer, and pretty soon, Johnny Come Lately got replaced by Jimmy Come Lately. And then Teddy Come Lately. So when we start talking about profits and profits, we have to look at where we're at in any industry. How do we manage to continually stay relevant, to remain being the new leader and not becoming stale in what we do? And that includes our industry. That's why things like hypnothoughts and all the other conferences that are going on out there, what mindset are people showing up to these conferences for? Are they showing up to find the latest gadget, the newest widget? Are they looking to see something, a new shiny that they can try out? And the new shiny, is it to keep themselves relevant, or is it to put another tool in the toolbox? I know mechanics who have a wall and a half or two of tools, because every time the Snap-on guy or the tool guy or the whatever Christmas special comes out and there's a new tool, they got to go get it. Oh, look at all the tools I got. Cool. How many of them make you money on the regular? And you find out that sometimes it's less than 10%. I've got 1,000 tools and I've only used 100 of them for the last 10 years. But if that 67 Ferrari Spider shows up And for those of you that are extreme car enthusiasts, if I said it wrong, put it in the comments. We'll have a nice chat about it. But when that car shows up, they have that one tool, and it's in the far corner at the bottom drawer in the very back. And hopefully they remember when it shows up. And hopefully they remember how to use it when they have to. Any questions, ahas, epiphanies on this one so far? Lenore?
While I am not a parent, I have found that certain things I talk about with people that are close to me about all the things that we love to talk about here, it doesn't necessarily resonate. And then they will hear it from somewhere else, or they will hear it in a different conversation. And they'll quite literally say, "Oh, do you know this? Have you heard this?" And my response is, I literally have said that for like months and months and months, or like, "Yes, I've been saying that for years." And like, "No, but you didn't say it like that." I'm like, "Okay. All right." So that's when you say you can't be a prophet in your own land. That's really where my brain goes, is when it comes to communication or thinking differently, or, you know, anything in this realm that we all discuss on, that's where my brain goes. So yes, I cannot be a prophet in my own land. Of which also I will add, trying to be a prophet in my own town or in my own community, not so much.
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce, BNI, not in these parts. So it's very interesting.
That's exactly what I was talking about. And Elijah put in the comments, for those of you that are watching the recording, unfortunately, you don't get to see the comments, so join us. But he said, surely you're not saying it's bad form to continue learning more tools. Absolutely not. I am, the people that know me, I am a learning junkie. I've had ferocious curiosity pretty much my entire life. Mom will be able to validate that I always want to learn something new. But as Lenora perfectly summed it up, it makes it hard for me to come back home to my small town area in Minnesota, Dad. Nothing against them. But when I come back, they're not quite sure how to take me because they know how many different things I've done. And some of them around here, God bless them, I love them dearly, but they can be a little stuck in the rut. Yeah, you with all them big city thoughts and thinking then, you know, we've been doing it this way for 2,000 years and we're still here. Yeah, okay, that's nice. But what if there was another way to do it? And what if you didn't have to go 100% left turn into that form of thinking? What if you just took the knowledge and picked out the best part that applied to you and applied it in increments? It doesn't take long for an airplane to land in a completely different area if they just change their trajectory just a little bit. That's why their instruments have to be so accurate. 1 degree off, you could be missing the landing strip by miles. And so that's why I've often said, what are the 3 most expensive words when somebody offers to teach you something? I know that. Well, we're already doing that. We know that. We don't need to hear your newfangled. Well, do you or don't you? Just because you've been presented with a new way of doing things does not mean or implicate that you have to do it that way. But you don't know what you don't know. And as such, somewhere, sometime, somehow, somebody is going to decide to open up their mind and take a little time to take in that lesson. And they may become your next strongest competitor, for good or bad. Any other questions, input, Mark?
Yeah, something that is close to home for all of us. Um, we've all been pretty indoctrinated into Dr. David's stuff. And, last time I was at Hypnothoughts, they had this new presenter, Chase Hughes. And, again, Dr. David was saying, he's saying a lot of the same stuff that I am in just a different way, because of his background and experiences in the military and stuff. And he was I think he continues to be wildly popular, growing his brand, saying a lot of the same things that Dr. David is, but in a different way. So,
Yeah. And I attended a number of Chase's classes, and yes, they were very similar in many ways, and yet the perspective and the background and the presentation were very different. And as such, I found it interesting when I realized that the difference between Dr. David's audience and Chase Hughes's audience were different. And it wasn't just because I knew at that time, I knew David's peeps quite well. And so it wasn't like I could go, well, I know all these people. You could just tell by the questions asked and the way they were just different in the best ways and the same ways. So I'm glad you brought that up. And again, I know for a fact that there was a number of Chase's audience that heard some of the stuff from Dr. David, and they just go, oh wow. Even though the teachings, the ideas, the concepts were very similar. So thank you for bringing that up. Anybody else? Or is it time to actually fit 2 topics in tonight?
Are you going to get to 2 topics?
We're gonna go at it right now. Topic number 2, 3 words and 3 letters. And it ties pretty much right in line with this one. It's a little segue, they call it. And I just gave the answer a little bit ago. What are the 3 most expensive words anytime somebody offers to teach you something? I know that. But what 3 letters typically fuel that the strongest, the most? Anybody know? Any guesses?
That fuel that?
Yep, that fuel, I know that. What 3 letters?
No.
Elijah got it. EGO. Ego.
Oh.
which ties right back into can't be a prophet in your own land. Oftentimes, the pushback happens also with ego. Like my favorite little story about who's the expert. The little boy that is standing there telling these experts how to get this big truck out of the tunnel that it got wedged into. Now, if the little boy said, "Well, I've got an idea. Can I tell you my idea?" I think you would have seen a stark difference in the egos of those that were present. And on top of that, I think it would have been, do they know the kid? Do they know the kid's background? Now, if this kid was one of those wonder kids that, he's in ninth grade, but he's already doing college classes, they may have decided to listen to him a little more. If this kid was the troublemaker in the area, maybe not so much. And if the experts that were there weren't into kids anyway, and they're like, "Oh, this is a dangerous area. We can't have these little kids around anyway. Somebody could get hurt. Oh my goodness, kid, we don't want to hear your idea. You need to get out of here. Go play football or play with over in the playground. But you shouldn't be here. Us adults have to think this through and use all of our amazing knowledge to figure out the answer to this." Luckily, as we all know, the kid was like, "Why don't you just let the air out of the tires?" Perfect answer, and it worked. So how many times have we allowed our ego to rob us of amazing lessons, amazing experiences, improvements, all the above? And how many times has it blinded us to even the options? Anybody got any input, ahas, epiphanies on this so far? Mark.
Yeah, the squirrel that popped into my head was that line from The Imitation Game, that movie. Alan Turing said to the actress there, it's the people that nobody imagines anything of that do the things that no one can imagine.
I would like you to repeat that a couple of times.
It's the people that no one imagines anything of that end up doing the things that no one can imagine.
Yes. And what do you think their egos may be like?
Well, again, in that situation, they kept, trying to make the female, the smart woman there, they kept trying to shove her into, "Oh, you're just a secretary. You got to go over with the secretaries," and, ego got in the way of seeing that in a lot of ways she was smarter than all the other guys in the room that were, positioned academicians. And but yeah, he that again, the author nailed it with that line that it's often the people that no one can imagine anything of that do the things that no one can imagine. So that's the scroll that popped into my head when you said that about ego getting in the way. And if it hadn't been for her, they never would have broken Enigma. And so
How many the it's almost scary to think of how many things we've lost out on, how many things society and the world has lost out on because of 3 words and 3 letters. And thankfully, so there are so many success stories of people who weren't willing to take no as an answer. One that just popped into my head. These little guys right here. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine, if you don't know the story behind that, 3M had a guy, an employee that was working on a type of glue that would work for a specific situation, and came across the adhesive for this. But they were thinking about it in a different application. And in doing the application, if I remember the story right, had to make sure that it could come off cleanly. And he was looking, if I remember right, they were looking at their desk and they had all these pieces of paper taped, because of course 3M has no shortage of tape. They're like, man, this is really inconvenient. What if I just put some of this adhesive on the back of the paper and they could be pulled apart? And this person took that idea to their supervisor, who unfortunately had a bit of an ego that day and said, nobody would want to have paper glued together, blah, 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 blah. It's a dumb idea. Now get back to what we asked you to do. But this guy's ego was a little more intact. So what he did, he made a bunch of these and distributed them to all of the secretaries of the supervisors and CEOs. What happened when the secretaries ran out of them? Hey, we need more of these. These are amazing. Well, what are they? I don't know. They were just on my desk and I need more of these. These are amazing. Well, the question started going through the production area. What are these? Where are they from? And how do we get more? And that's when the guy was, I came up with it. This is what I did. I thought it was kind of cool, but I was told that it was a dumb idea. And as we know, the rest is history. That being said, with all the things that we've learned, if you think back, how many things do you know that you can remember having a little pushback when it was first presented to you as something being offered for you to learn? Can any of you remember anything in particular that you remember when it was first offered to be taught to you and you're like, I don't need to know that. I got things to do. Lenora.
Oh, I have been quite sassy in my life, and I have definitely said that along the lines of people who were trying to teach me something. I do recall it most frequently in middle school and in high school. I think I started to get my act together a little bit more in graduate school, and then after graduate school, then I was like, okay, I'll listen. Outwardly, there might have been a little bit of an eye roll in my head, but I've definitely been known to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Mark. It's there somewhere. You're still muted. Can't hear you. Mark, microphone.
No.
I was going to say ego
There.
strength.
Huh?
If you have good ego strength, you know, and, you know, you have a solid idea, you're much more likely to stick to your guns.
Exactly. And that's where the tipping point, the challenge is between, well, I've got this idea and this is the way it should be done, versus I've got this idea that I strongly believe in. What do you think could add to it? Doesn't mean that I have to take it, doesn't mean that I have to accept it, but I'm certainly not going to discredit your ability to possibly provide me some input. I've got one. Before I met David, if somebody had offered to teach me hypnosis, guess what? I would have had no time for that. None. Zero. And I would not be here doing Triple T with all you beautiful people right now. Luckily, my guardian angel and all those involved knew this to be true. And so when I was introduced to David, I did not know that he was teaching hypnosis. And so luckily, my curiosity and my relentless drive for learning stuff allowed me to sit in his class long enough to go, hey, this is kind of cool. Do I want to teach it? Nope. Do I want to do it? Nope. But I'll be his AV guy. Next thing you know.
Oh, how little you knew what was ahead for you.
Yep. Plot twist, left turn. Again. Which comes right back to my profound preaching of you're only one hello away from a completely different life. Lenora.
I started to take that more literally, and I'll even say you're one task away from a totally different life, or you're one phone call away, or you're one reel, or you're one social media post away from a totally different life. And I've really found myself to, you know, what's hilarious is if you guys knew the amount of Post-its that were around this place, you'd laugh your butts off. But I really found myself working to apply it and thinking about it on such a deeper level. And from our conversations here and then the text message conversations that we all have, I like what Elijah put in the chat. He said, I'm one sleep away from a totally different dream. That's a good one too, Elijah.
Yep.
It really starts to put it into perspective, and it really helps shift your inner voice when you start to say it out loud. So I'll even say it like while I'm folding laundry.
Mm-hmm. And Mike put in a good comment as well. Ego strength, self-confidence, and self-image are fueled by self-defense mechanisms. Very much so. Especially the combination of the three, ego strength, self-confidence, and self-image. That is a very strong trifecta, and it can create some very strong barriers into advancement and open-minded thinking. Mark.
Yeah, I was working with this young man, and we were doing creating dials, and You have to reach out and imagine you're grabbing, in this case, the anger dial and turning it down, and imagine what it feels like in your body and your mind when the anger is a 4, a 3, a 2, or 1. And I taught him that. And after about 6 weeks of doing it, comes in one day and he goes, I got a real, you know, I got a serious question to ask you. I was like, what is it? He goes, I'm a little embarrassed, if I'm with my buddies and I get to feel that anger to have to reach out and turn it down in front of them. He goes, how would it be if I just imagined reaching out? Something I got blasted that I had never even, in a million years, I would not have come up with. I said, have you tried it? He goes, yeah. I said, does it work? He goes, it works as good as the first thing you taught me. I said, well, you just taught me something. Imitate, inculcate, innovate.
Yes. And I am so glad that you brought that up as well. Being open to getting that type of feedback and acknowledging it. Wow, I'd never thought of that. I'm going to do that now. It was so funny because here in my hometown, we have a gentleman had his own business for moving houses. And if you guys have ever seen a house being moved, it's wild. It is so wild. And being able to understand how to get underneath a house and put in all of these cross beams and support beams that will roll onto a set of wheels. So you can hook it up to a large truck and tow it down a road to put it to rest on a different foundation is crazy. But he learned something the hard way, Elijah, just to get away from the neighbors. Yeah, that'd be one reason. But he learned something one day because trying to hire people to do that kind of work can be challenging. I mean, you got to have some strength to move that stuff around and do that type of work. So he, of course, has to hire a bunch of thick-necked men named Gunther who can come in and do this type of work. And one day he shows up and he looked at what they were doing and he got furious. He's like, what are you doing? That's not the way we do it. And they said, but it's easier and it works. And you know, what? And he said it took him a little bit to stop and look at the way they were doing it. And he was angry because he thought that they were just being lazy. And he said, sometimes you have to hire some guys that have just the right amount of lazy to try and figure out how to do it a better way so they don't have to work so hard. Yes, Mark, you're right. One person cannot see all the different facets of what we teach others. You can't have too much ego. And that is what he learned right there that day. Pretty much his entire career, they had been doing it through full on strength and force. And he was lucky enough to hire a couple of guys that were smart enough with just the right amount of laziness to go, that's too hard. There's got to be a better way. By gosh, they figured it out. Any other input, ahas, epiphanies on that? Mark?
Sometimes we have to imagine how to do things. We learn something and then, we have to, again, I teach fathers of young daughters a technique called the boyfriend destroyer. It originally came from the pickup and seduction community. But what it does is if you have multiple daughters and they bring home that out of work, high school dropout, tattooed, pierced guy, the father's, typical response, oh, you can't be with him. He's a piece of crap. All you're doing is forcing them closer together. But the boyfriend destroyer, which I mutated into, let's say, white magic from dark magic, that, when she says, oh, you cause a transderivational search within the daughter's mind. You say, oh, I'm so glad, honey, you found the one, the man you're truly meant to be with, the guy you're going to spend every minute for the rest of their life with. I'm so glad that at such a young age, you found the one, the man of your dreams. And I bet there's not one thing about him you'd like to change. And it causes what's called a transderivational search. And it takes about 2 weeks, and then she breaks up with the kid because, is this the man of my dreams? The girl starts questioning, and is this the guy I want to spend every minute for the rest of forever with? Is this the one? Is this the guy that, I'm truly meant to be with? Like I said, it takes about 2 weeks, field tested. And I only teach it to fathers of young daughters now.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because, again, judging by looks, I do something very similar in Triple P, the Perfect Partner Protocol. Regardless of their looks, regardless of their stature, their presentation, the beautiful mask they put on, ABT, ABT, ABT. Always be testing, always be testing. And what you just did there also is you allowed them to give their conscious and subconscious permission to look behind the mask. Find as many ways as possible to peek around that mask that they're holding up of, look at me, I'll say whatever you want and I'll be the person that you want right now. Regardless of how heavy this mask is, they can now look around the mask and go, wait a minute, why are you hiding back there? So, Holly.
So, see if I remember all three of them. Three things popping into my head. So the first one is a long time ago, somebody told me, I can't even remember where I heard this from, but there's two things smart people sometimes will forget. And one is that if you take any two people, even if one person happens to have, say, a higher IQ than the other person, there's almost always something that the lower IQ person's going to know that the high IQ person doesn't know, for one. And another one is, even if you've got a really high IQ, if you're in a room with 5 people, even if you have the highest IQ of the 5 people, there's almost guaranteed you don't have a higher IQ than the combined IQ of all of the other people in the room. So that was one thing. Another one that keeps popping in my head is, for those of you who know the story of the Challenger disaster. This story, I heard it in multiple classes that one year, so it just kept coming up. But there was a guy who was the specialist for that part that ended up blowing up that was worried about that part because it had never been tested in that weather. And he said to multiple people, I don't think we should do this launch. And basically, he let everybody around him talk him out of it and say, no, we're smarter than you.
Yep.
And I remember watching an interview with him, and he just says, looking back on it, how he can't, he just feels so awful. He wishes he'd gotten up stood up on the desk and yelled at the top of his lungs, you're going to listen to me. But at the time, he allowed himself to say, well, I have nothing of value to add here because I'm just a little peon on the bottom of the totem pole. I don't have a right to be. And that's basically what everybody was saying to him too. So just remember, it's not always just some small things. Sometimes the stakes are really high when you choose not to put your voice in because you don't think you're smart enough. And then the third thing I just was thinking about was, I don't know how many of you know that I worked in parking for quite a few years. But I was just thinking about when I was in college, before I worked in parking, I used to constantly go through my mind of the ways I'd fix parking. And then I actually got into parking and realized that none of my ideas would work. And so it's one of those things, it's like, I had no idea how much parking costs to build, how much it costs to maintain, all of the politics that were involved, so many things that I had no clue until I was dealing with the reality on the ground. And one of the things that taught me, everywhere I've ever gone, if you think something's way off and that you've got an easy answer, 9 times out of 10, either that solution wouldn't work and everybody's already thought of it 10 times over because they work with us every day, or the solution would work, but the reason it's not allowed to work, I cannot tell you the number of times that I've seen that the people who think they're smarter, they're higher up, but they're not on the front lines. Some of these stories we've already said are kind of this way. They think they know better, and so they won't let the people who know what to do do what they know should be done. So anyway.
So you brought up so many good things. My squirrels are For those of you that are wondering what we're talking about, squirrels, that's when you going along and all of a sudden the little idea pops up and you're like, squirrel. My squirrels have squirrels that know squirrels that bring along squirrels. And so things are popping up all over the place. And Holly, boy, did you bring up a lot of stuff. One, when you were talking about the parking idea and you've got all these ideas, kind of reminded me of the lazy boy coaches, the people that watch the sports on TV and they're like, I can't believe you called that play. You should have done. Backseat drivers and all the above. And you have to think about a little of what I call protective empathy and understand that every single one of us is doing the best we can at the time with the tools, the knowledge, and the energy we have available to us. If we knew we could do better, we would. And the other one that popped up was this is the very importance of mastermind in businesses, in communities, all of the above. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, I guess is the way. When you get that enough and that many people together that can look at challenges and problems from multiple angles, each having their own experiences, even if they all worked in the same style of profession, they all had different backgrounds. They had different trainings, different experiences that they can draw upon, which brings me right up to the other 3 solutions to every event, situation, or problem that may occur. If you've been around me for any amount of time, Mom will verify. She's heard me say that how many times, Mom? Millions. And what really hit it home for me is when they start looking for solutions on certain items, and now they're re-looking at solutions for certain applications. What happened was at the first time that they were doing things, they're like, we need a solution. Oh, we found a solution. Boom. And they went with the first one. And it worked. But now I challenge people, you have a solution. Okay, good. What's another one? And they're like, well, why do we need another one? I just figured this out. Okay, well, if you've lost your keys to your car and you find your keys and you keep searching, we got meds for that. But if you're trying to figure out a solution to certain problems, you find a solution and then you try to come up with two more. Why three? Because the first solution may be good. And then all of a sudden you keep thinking, oh, and then you come up with this one and you get forced to do one more. And I've seen it so many times, something magical happens. Sometimes when you look at the combination of the three solutions you came up with, a fourth one pops up. And it's a hybrid of the first three that you came up with. And you realize that it is quantum better than the first solution that you were ready to settle on. And Mike put a great comment in here when we were talking about the house moving deal. He said discussing the guys finding a new way to move the house. It's interesting what you do not see when what you focus on is too close. And it's the same with personal issues. Could you imagine at times when you are caught up in a problem to step back and see other options, which again, three solutions to every problem. Being able to take that time and step back and analyze it from an outside view. Yes, Elijah, great comment. It's like when the CEO thinks they can run the assembly line. I know I'm getting into your guys' time, but one of the corporate coaching deals that I got into, they were the gentleman that got a hold of me, and it was just because somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who knew me, and put him in touch with me. And we cleared up some personal limiting beliefs that he was dealing with, because I found out that CEOs, COOs, and all those top people are still human beings. Who'd have thought it? But what I found out, they had locations in 4 different countries, and they were having problems getting through a glass ceiling of profits and production. And so one of the things I told him was, you need to have a mastermind meeting online with boots from the ground. Not supervisors, not regional managers, I want you to put together a large mastermind with boots on the ground and have people from finance, from HR, from production, all the above. And the next meeting I had with him, do you know what we found out? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I said the information, because I've been boots on the ground, typically gets shut down and filtered out by each level going up for whatever reason. A lot of times it's that 3-letter thing. But when they got the boots on the ground and got to talking, and he found out that maybe production had this idea of what they should do, and finance was like, well, how do we fund that and stay profitable? Well, we need more people. Well, what kind? Well, then they're explaining to HR, we've got plenty of these guys. We're missing some of these guys. And he said once they got that all figured out and put some of that stuff into place, even that week, some misunderstandings of how to do things got cleared up in that one mastermind. So, oh yeah, another great comment from Mike. The fact that they would stir the water and cause more work for themselves. Easier to go with the flow. Meaning the supervisors and stuff. We're going along fine. Don't cause no waves. Yeah, but the company's trying to grow. We need to challenge some stuff to keep going. But we are now 6 minutes into your guys' hour. And I appreciate your patience because I know that you guys all have a whole number of questions and topics that you've been chomping at the bit to bring up. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you guys. Who's got the first question of the evening? Mike put in, here comes chirp, chirp, chirp. Mark.
Okay. Have you guys ever heard of the concept of the wisdom of the crowd? The wisdom of the crowd, again, it's an old concept if you look it up, that groups are normally smarter, more intuitive than individuals. And Darren Brown, hypnotist in England, had his did a little experiment with it. He had and I hope I don't butcher it, but he had all the lottery winnings for the Irish sweepstakes for the last 10 or 15 listed on a piece of paper, and he gave a piece of paper out to everybody. And he did a little relaxation thing to put them in a nice, gentle trance state. And he asked them to just imagine, picking out the 6 or 8 numbers. I forget what the sweepstakes, how many numbers. But he had them circle the numbers that felt right. And maybe it's 10 numbers or whatever. And once he again, this is the latest iteration that I know of the wisdom of the crowd. And he had them circle those numbers. Then he passed it, had them all pass them in, tabulated them, averaged them, and got like 8 out of 10 of the numbers the next drawing. So not only is the crowd wiser, but it seems to be more intuitive and more psychic when you combine crowds. The wisdom of the crowd is how he was talking about it. I haven't done too much research into it, but I just wanted to ask what everybody's input would be about it.
Cool. So who's got some input on this? I know, Michael, you got your hand up on the road, so safely.
Yes, sir. So really quick, I'm going to say it's going to depend on your crowd. In our crowd, yes, I'd be okay. Yes, okay, we can have a discussion, and I would trust that together we are wiser than other crowds. You look at the 2 different studies. Well, first of all, a friend of mine always said, if you see a crowd of people running one way and animals are running the other way, follow the animals. Just saying.
Just saying.
When you go into the studies where they did you have like 6 people, 7 people in a room, and 5 of them are planted to say, hey, if that's a square, or this line is larger, or this picture is different than this other picture. The one person who's not, he knows that it's incorrect, but he's going to go with the crowd often than not. And that's no bueno in my
Yeah.
book. So those are things that you have to be careful of when you're following the crowd. Is who is your crowd?
And as soon as you said that, the saying popped into my head, the mob rules.
Yeah.
And that's why I push so many of my clients and students to take a close look at the people that you hang out with the most, especially the top 5 you hang out with the most. It is so true enough to be true.
If you're the smartest person in your group or your room, you need to find a new group.
Yes, 100% every time. And the pushback that I get on that is typically, well, I'm I'm helping them, and I tell them that when I tell you to find another room doesn't mean that you shut the door to the other one and you never go back.
Yep.
You go learn from people smarter than you to be able to come back to the other room and go, how can I help you guys improve while I'm here for a short while before I go back and find smarter people again?
It's kind of like how you do when you're talking about relationships.
Yes.
You know, if you find in your deck of cards here, are you you've been settling for 3s and 4s. Now you've got a 6 or 7, but that's still not a king or queen.
Exactly.
And same thing with your rooms and the crowds.
Exactly. That's why I feel so blessed to have you guys showing up here every week.
And
I
vice versa.
adore you all.
In
Holly.
Spanish, I say igualmente, and I'll get out of your hair. But igualmente means equal to you.
Thank you. Holly.
So, I will say, I will second the idea that it depends on what crowd you're in, because certain crowds could definitely elevate you. There's a reason there's a book out there that's called The Madness of Crowds, is the first thing that popped into my head. I will say with that trick, I mean, it was an interesting trick, but I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian David Mitchell, but he said something about that trick that was fascinating. He says, if you watch it, Darren Brown reveals the numbers after the lottery numbers are revealed. And he says, I think the biggest part of that trick, because remember, he calls himself an illusionist. He's very upfront about that. Not everything he does is genuinely what he says he's doing. And anyway, so what David Mitchell said is, I think the biggest part of that trick is that he tricked people into calling it predicting the lottery because he said it after the lottery was revealed. A lot of people have looked into that trick. It was a lot of flash, but not a lot of substance. But it reminds me also of a lecture that I watched that was supposedly on the idea that crowds have wisdom. I believe that there's a lot of wisdom in the crowd. But as soon as you start thinking as a crowd, that's when the problems happen. Because most people start falling in line, and that's when groupthink starts to happen. That's I can't remember who said it, and I don't know what science is behind it, but they said something about when you start acting as a crowd, you get your average IQ of the crowd is what comes out. So you might pull some people who, once again, as people are saying, if you're in the right crowd and you're sitting around people who are smarter than you, they're going to elevate you to their level. But if you're in a crowd that, and once again, as we've discussed, there's different kinds of intelligence. There's probably things in the crowd that's smarter than you. So it depends on how you're using the crowd. But when you start thinking as a crowd, instead of thinking as individuals in the crowd that are bouncing ideas off of each other, you're just as likely to drop your IQ as you are to raise your IQ. Often you get to that average. And they did because there used to be this idea that one of the reasons why you want to have voting is they always said, we thought that people would be dumb on opposite ways and they'd cancel each other out. And then the people who knew what they were talking about would make all the decisions. So, for example, the example they used was how much money should be spent on foreign aid. And they said, well, we think some people will think we should spend way too much on foreign aid. And we think some people will think we should spend too little on foreign aid. They'll cancel each other out, and the people who actually know what they're talking about will make the decisions. But they put this to the test, and they discovered that this was not at all true, that almost always the less you knew about the topic, the more likely you were to skew the same way. So they said the people who knew how much we actually spent, so, you know, and this was just one example, but the people who knew exactly how much money we spend on foreign aid had very different views than people who didn't know how much we spent on foreign aid. Most people didn't know how much we spent on foreign aid and thought that we should spend, so basically they thought we should spend less on it. But then when they said how much they thought we spent on it, they overestimated it by something like a factor of 10. And then they gave what they thought was the ideal number, because they weren't allowed to, you know, Google it. They were just testing what people thought. And when they gave the ideal number of what we should be spending, it was more than we are currently spending, and yet every single one of them thought we needed to spend less. Now, once again, that's not saying what we should be spending, but the point was, so let's make up a number. Let's say it's well, I don't want to make up a number. It'll confuse it even more. But the point is, if they're right about the ideal spending, then they should have said we should spend more. So they have to be wrong on one of those 2 points. Either we should genuinely be spending less, and then the ideal amount we should be spending is less than they said, or the amount they said is right, which means we should be spending more. It can't, you know, they're mutually exclusive. But they came up with lots of different examples of this and showed that this myth that it was like a 2-hour lecture where they went into all the science of how they proved it and all the psychology of what they proved. And it's the idea that crowds, when they start acting as a crowd, first of all, one of the things that goes away is personal responsibility. So, you know, if you work for a corporation or you work for the government, you are probably going to take less pride in your work and less responsibility for your work than if you are a CEO of a sole proprietorship and it's your money on the line.
Yep.
As an example. So once again, it's not that the crowds don't have the wisdom in there. And if you're not acting as a crowd and you're bouncing ideas off, it could be good. But as soon as you start acting as a crowd, everybody puts their head down, wants to fit in, starts buying into groupthink. So crowd dynamics can be very dangerous. The crowd itself, if crowd dynamics are not ruling, can be very valuable. Hopefully that's not too muddled.
No, thank you for that input. Yes, very, very good information. Michael.
Back to the crowd thing. What Ollie just brought up without bringing up a whole lot of stuff that might get you deplatformed. Things that happened a few years ago, where if you thought one way, or if you questioned anything, you were shunned. You were thought of as a tinfoil hat person.
Yep.
If you're just free thinking, and the crowd villainized a lot of people for having independent thinking, which is no bueno.
No, and there have been many leaders who understood that dynamic quite well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Fran.
Well, again, I apologize coming in late on this topic, and I don't have huge crowd influence, but on a smaller group influence, energy, changing your own energy first, actually directing energy toward the crowd, hopefully to do what you think is a really good idea, rather than if you have a clear idea of your own, you can definitely present more positive influence. But I've noticed the difference with sending energy to a meeting to make it run smoothly or to get a sensible majority happening. If you actually take a little bit of time in prep, it goes a long, long way in all ways, not just energy, but in clarity of where you are, in who you are being when you are attending or chairing the meeting. I blow my own trumpet. I had a difficult meeting to chair a couple of weeks ago, and I had to work on myself first because I was expecting it to be a bun fight. And when it actually happened with a little bit of prep, it went very smoothly. So energy goes a long way, my point.
It does go a long way. Awesome. Anybody else got anything they want to share? Is it time for a new topic? Mark, did you get the mileage you were hoping for out of that topic? I'm going to get a little sound.
I'm sorry. I said, wow, what a mastermind group response. That was awesome. Like I said, I saw the presentation. I've seen the criticism, that was written on it. But I just wanted to get everybody's input on the concept. And I
Awesome.
got a boatload. Thank you.
Cool. Well, it sounds like it's time for a new question or a new topic. Who's got something for the group to invest in? I'm going to get a sound generator of crickets chirping.
Well, I'm going to come up with the topic of forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving other people, not holding on to stuff that we should let go of and start laughing about. Who's good at forgiveness and getting everybody else to go into forgiveness as well?
Big topic. Awesome.
Big topic.
Who's got the first answer for our lovely Miss Fran? Holly. Mike too. Who's going first?
You can go first, Mike. Go ahead.
All right. Woo, woo. The heaviest thing in life to carry is a grudge. Period. So
Yeah.
you've got to forgive yourself. 100%. Holly, you are the best. First of all, every time you come in the meeting, and I didn't see you in the meeting because I'm driving, I'm going, whoa, there's Holly. Woo, woo. Because your energy that you bring is 100% genuine and fantastic, and it is amazing. And I 100% wholeheartedly agree with adjusting your energy before you go into a meeting. And you also do this by forgiving yourself and forgiving others. And everyone's going to have their own opinions, but you find what you look for. And if you look for negativity, you're going to find it. So you've got to forgive yourself first, find the positive, find the reasons why. And I love it. So, all right. Adios.
Go. Holly.
Well, thank you so much. Anyway, loving the energy here too, by the way. Thank you for starting my day off right. I'm about to go to work, and boy, did I need this today. But so I would say, first of all, for me, the first most important bit of forgiveness is defining it. Because I think a lot of people don't realize I'll put my avatar on. A lot of people don't realize that there's more than one definition for forgiveness. And I like to call them as kind of tiers of forgiveness. And the first tier of forgiveness is saying, I'm letting go of my right to be the victim. And we'll get to self and how this applies to self in a minute. But, and basically, the quote that I've heard that I think sums this up is the moment of recognizing that I could drink all the poison in the world. Oh, sorry. And it's never once going to hurt the other person. So I'm going to stop drinking that poison. I'm going to stop drinking that bitterness. I'm going to stop thinking I'm going to have my day in court where I'm going to get to, tell God, source, the universe, higher self, whatever, what they did to me. And they're going to have to turn around and apologize to me. That day is never going to happen. And, it's kind of the idea of it's between me and God, what I've done, what I haven't done. It's between them and God, what they have done and what they haven't done, or source, higher self, whatever you want to call it, karma, luck, whatever. And For all I know, they've already made it up 10 times over. For all I know, they're never going to get forgiveness, but it's none of my business. My business is between me and, my conscience, my karma, taking care of what I'm dealing with. So that's one thing is, so some people think forgiveness, and this is a forgiveness, but it's a different level of forgiveness, and it's restoration of trust. Restoration of trust is earned. And you earn it by, I'm going to put up boundaries, and I'm going to test you on the small boundaries and see how you do. And if you break my trust, that is evidence for how you should be in my life going forward. It's evidence for how much time I should be spending with you, because I have limited time. And when I choose to spend it with someone who is just, leeching, all I'm doing is enabling bad behavior. How is that a good thing? A lot of people think, I have a duty to enable bad behavior because, they're entitled to my energy, they're entitled to my time. No, they're not. That's not forgiveness. So forgiveness sometimes is even saying, hey, I'm going to cut off the energy. And part of forgiveness is having healthy boundaries. And people think it's the opposite. And that's where people, I think, get in a lot of trouble, is they think it's the opposite, and it's not. The most forgiving thing you could do to somebody is have healthy boundaries with them. And that's going to include with yourself too. But another thing that I solidly believe, and this, I think you introduced me to some of these concepts with the Court of Atonement and some of these things, but I solidly believe that at the end of the day, and might be kind of controversial for some people to believe it, I think I've told the story before about the little girl that I met, that I basically, when I met her, I had this all of a sudden, I just saw her power and her energy and how beautiful she was. And I mean, she was, I think, 9 years old when I met her, and I had this urge to like bow down and worship her, and I wondered who she was. And I was thinking, oh, this woman, she's going to go on to be a huge leader. She's going to go on to be, really, really smart in the sciences, or she's going to go on to, be a huge political leader or a religious leader or something like that. And what it ended up being is she was the spirit that was strong enough to take on and absorb a bunch of abuse in her family. And, that seems like, I believe that's, sometimes the biggest thing somebody could do. But anyway, so one of the thoughts I always have is if I'm trying to judge somebody else's pain or whatever, I have no idea what their strength is. I have no idea what they were willing to sign up for when they were designing their life. I have no idea who they were protecting, who they were loving, what they were personally learning. And maybe they're in some kind of, advanced placement version of life, and I'm just, in kindergarten still. That doesn't mean I can't have, grace for them. It doesn't mean I'm not willing to be a shoulder for them to cry on when they need it. But I think sometimes we get so caught up in, I need to get justice for this person. And it's like, no, their justice is between them and their karma, their higher self, whatever it may be. But anyway, so with that being said, I do believe that there is an energy out there that can convert all harmful energy into growth energy. And it's our choice whether to keep holding on to the energy as harmful energy or to accept that gift of turning it into growth energy. And if that's true, and we were doing the best we could with the knowledge and understanding we had, or even if we weren't, maybe we were in a place where we didn't think it was valuable and we needed to learn to care about other people. Whatever it may be, when we're looking back at the things we've done, I believe that, first of all, there might be cases where somebody's telling us something we did was bad, and it's just their perception anyway. Maybe it was exactly what they needed to hear in that moment. Maybe it was exactly what they needed to wake them up. And the thing that they're mad about is more just the fact that we pointed out somebody's, weaknesses or interrupted their cognitive dissonance. They're not really mad at what we did. They're mad at what we brought to their attention. We're mad at what lesson that we caused them to learn. This one came to me because we used to do faith walks when I was a teenager. And I had a faith walk where they had me be the person who had special disabilities. And it was a really interesting experience because they gave me special knowledge that I was supposed to be allowed to help the people around me. And it gave a completely different version of, because I, in real life, I have my certain disabilities, and I'd always felt shame about all these people having to, work so hard to understand me and be so patient with me and adapt to my communication style. And in that moment, it was like, what if the whole reason I'm here with these disabilities, part of it was to teach them and help them learn how to have patience, teach them and help them learn how to slow down and recognize that there are other ways to communicate and other ways to love and things like that. So when it comes to forgiving ourselves, step one is recognizing maybe there's nothing to even forgive sometimes. Maybe we did exactly what we were supposed to do and we were playing the role we were supposed to play. And, you know, they needed to learn something, we needed to learn something, and we've become somebody different. Now, when it comes to the truly dark stuff, also recognizing, I think Matthew Hussey does this analogy of, you know, do you take your iPod first generation and do you beat up your current iPod, if you have an iPod, for what your first generation iPod did? No, it's not the exact same device anymore. It's an upgraded device. Or the other example is, let's say you're in a relay race. For those who don't know what a relay race is, you know, you hand off the stick and the next person runs the next bit. Assume the first runner falls down and then they stand back up and now you're behind, right? And you're the third runner. Do you sit around beating up the first runner for falling down when they probably didn't even intend to anyway? Or do you just say, hey, I've got the stick and I'm where I'm at and I'm just going to do the best I can running forward? You know, like, are we wasting our time beating up that first runner, beating up that first generation when it wasn't even us who did it anymore, because we are a different person than the person who did that? So I think that, yeah, a lot of it is just saying, what have I learned? Have I learned what I need to learn? You know, is there any kind of growth that I could get from it? Is there anything I can learn to do better next time? And once I've extracted that, trusting that if the other person genuinely was hurt, whether I intended it or not, they have the right to go to the universe and say, hey, take this energy and translate it into growth energy. Translate it into something that's going to make me better. And just as they have the right to do that, if they do something that I feel like hurts me and I perceive as hurting me, I have the right to do it too. And if I'm choosing not to trade it in for that gift, and instead, I think that's what a lot of people do, is they want to hold on to the hurt because they feel like holding on to the hurt justifies the pain and is what's going to get them in trouble. And I don't believe that for a second. Like I said, that's drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Wow. All right. There you have it, folks. Holly, this is why we adore it when you grab the mic and start talking. Please do this as often as you can. And Michael, you had your hand up, or are you passing the
Yes, sir.
baton?
No. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep. Squirrels went off when Holly brought up as far as defining the forgiveness and what happens when you ask somebody else for forgiveness. So this is what's important, and this is what I've learned from experience, is if you ask for forgiveness, you need to clarify and ask the person you're asking for forgiveness, do you accept my apology? And then ask them what that means to them. Because like Holly just talked about, rebuilding the trust and things like this. So you may ask for forgiveness and they don't accept it. You need to know what that means. Does that make sense? So you've got to take the step further and ask that question and say, hey, do you accept my apology? And then you can grow from there. So anyway, I thought that was important to share.
Awesome. Fran.
Well, again, Holly got me all sparked up too. And yes, we don't know what we term as mistakes are actually how they're actually going to benefit other people. Sometimes things that appear to be bad, or at least in your perspective bad, are actually sometimes the biggest favor you can do for the other person and their destiny and their life. So, especially when it comes to breaking connections with people, if that's just not working, maybe they'll learn something. Maybe they will come across somebody who actually teaches them much better than you can. The other thing about mistakes and forgiveness, things that I have noticed, that things that I'd been tearing myself up about, if I actually mention them later to another person, they don't even remember the incident. And I've been ripping myself up for years. And it meant nothing to them. It was just in my perspective, in my perception. And the other thing I've noticed, particularly lately, is if I need to apologize to somebody and just laugh at my own stupidity, often that eases the tension incredibly and everybody's happy and it all blows over really quickly. But again, that does depend on what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mark.
Holly, that was great. That was a mic drop. Boom. But to put a finer point on one of the aspects that you mentioned, again, the difference between forgiveness and contrition. Good Catholic boy that I am, I know this. Contrition is asking another person to forgive you, okay? And to emphasize your points, all is forgiveness is a personal act of letting it go, the hurt. Contrition is asking another person to forgive you because you need that person to forgive you rather than, you letting it go. Sometimes you can't let it go until that you've gotten that forgiveness from another person. So, but there's a distinction there between forgiveness and contrition. Sometimes people want to get that forgiveness from another, and sometimes they can let it go without getting that from another person. But those are that's the distinction as I see it between forgiveness and contrition.
Awesome. Very cool. Lenora.
I love how many different insights are going on here. And truly, what works for an individual and where they are at that point in time, I think is so fantastic. One thing that really helped me was sitting with, why is this still bothering me? And having a conversation. And then I went even deeper and I separated it out and realized that it was more about the word. And so if I was sitting with that younger part or trying to pull that energy out, I started to notice the energy and I would extract it with a syringe. And I started to notice also, I don't have to think this thought. I don't have to spend time with this. I don't have to have this emotion around it. I can separate it out. And in that, it allowed me to keep separating the energy and separating the energy. And I liked, and it really depends on where you are in the emotional scale and where you are in your thought process, but to even recognize that you were the chooser of your thoughts. You were the keeper of your thoughts. You don't have to think this thought. And something that I really literally spent 15 minutes saying was, I don't have to think this thought. I don't have to think this thought. It doesn't have to be mine. And repeating that over and over again helped dilute whatever it was that I was going through. And it really gave me a much different perspective. So the more focused attention that you give it in modifying it, not necessarily on the topic, but in modifying the topic, it really helps give that upper expansion and that greater expansion so that you can decide and have that clarity.
Wow. Rock and roll and Fran.
Yes, well, a cautionary tale about apologizing and seeking forgiveness. Years ago, I was involved with the Landmark program. I don't know whether you've come across it, but one of their first processes was to clean up your own act and go and apologize for the stuff you've done in your life. However, be aware that things that you think were problems may not be a problem to somebody else. And if you admit your own culpability in something that the other person didn't even think about, you might actually create a bigger problem that wasn't there in the first place. And there are also other problems that are like scabs. Sometimes you just need to leave them alone and let them heal. It's your shit that you're clearing out. It's nothing to do with them. So be considerate to the other person. Sometimes it's best just to leave it alone because that's the kindest, most healing thing to do. Thank you.
Holly.
Ooh, that is so powerful. Something else that was popping into my head too is I think a lot of people don't realize that forgiveness is a process. It's meant to be a process, and that's okay. They think it's just like a light switch or a moment in time, like boom, I've reached forgiveness, you know. No, it's a process, and you might feel a little bit more forgiving in one moment and not in another. And it's meant to be growth. It's meant to be exploration. It's meant to be taking that, seeing how you could take responsibility, and you know, what is your responsibility? What isn't your responsibility? What, you know, how can I? It's not. So you know, if something horrible happens to you and you don't immediately bounce back, just say this is part of the process. And if somebody says, "Have you forgiven?" You know, you can say, "I am in the process of forgiving." And that's totally fine. That's exactly, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to have arrived at forgiveness or you immediately, the second it happened, already forgave it. I mean, great. If you're able to do that, awesome. But it's totally okay to be patient with yourself. It's totally okay for it to take time. It's meant to be a process, and it's more meaningful when it's a process. And then also, I was just going to say, when it comes to the actual, you know, if you want it to be a restoration of trust, I would recommend going into the Gottmans. I've been watching a lot of their videos lately. That they have an entire process for in a relationship how you can restore trust after betrayal, and it's absolutely fascinating. But one of the things they do point out is both people have to be all in on it, and the person who's been, you know, wronged, if, and once again, this comes down to, do both people feel like they've been wronged? Because, you know, there's always that idea of, am I apologizing because I'm worried about their pain, or am I apologizing to make myself feel better? You know, what Fran was saying kind of made that pop into my head. But assuming that they agree that they need, you know, a moment of, you know, a lot of it is transparency. A lot of it is, I'm not going to defend, but I'm open, and you can ask any question you need to ask during this period. But one of the things they point out too is that if you're going to have a successful relationship, at some point, you can't just keep, the person who's been wronged can't just hold on to this for the rest of their lives either, because that's not fair to the relationship. If you know that's where you're going to be, sometimes it's better to just end the relationship than to drag the other person along and have no way that they can ever make amends to you.
Always amazing. Mark.
Yeah, I was, like I said, to refer to what Fran said, Mom used to say, if you don't stop picking at it, it's never going to heal. That was the first thing that came to me. But when I used to do back in the day, again, when I started doing couples, I had to tell them there are no justified resentments. You know, when you're having problems in a relationship, they're like snake bites. And I would tell the couple, I said, and no snake bite in the entire history of human beings had, you know, again, has ever killed a human being. It's always the poison that's injected. Referring back to what Lenora said, you know, about, you know, using the syringe to pull the poison out. And the last thing was something Lenora last week was talking about, you know, again, arguments and, you know, sibling stuff and, you know, the modeling and stuff like that. But, you know, came up with a new word, because when you're having these arguments, like I said, you can, you know, the process of forgiveness, but in the moment, like I said, you're just trying to hurt the other person. So there are no arguments. There are just hurt-uments. It's hurt-u-ments. So it's kind of a new term. I just haven't quite figured out how to make it sound smoother. But yeah, so there are no justified resentments. There are only snake bites, and you know, and sometimes they're unintended, but they can do a lot of damaged, basically. And yeah, like I said, good stuff. But yeah, but there are no justified resentments, but they do a lot of damage sometimes, and they need to be forgiven.
Absolutely.
Well,
Cool.
And
Fran.
then there is forgiving yourself and forgiving others for not forgiving, because sometimes it's not the right time to forgive, or you have got to the right place where you can forgive, and that's okay too. And being in a reaching a place where you're okay with the not forgiven, but forgiving yourself for not forgiving, or forgiving the others for not forgiving. And yet there are also situations where there's the unforgivable. There are unforgivable situations. And what do you do then? I was listening to somebody who had been in prison for murder and was wrestling with these problems. And his solution, as best he could make, was to try and bring some good into the big picture and help other people not do the unforgivable that he had done. And somehow in the universe, there's a kind of, in my perception, a kind of account book that even if you can't actually heal and forgive that, maybe you can put some good into the universe in another place if you can't heal that. Thanks.
Awesome. Holly.
Oh, Fran, that was so good. It brought up so many ideas in my mind. So some of this may not resonate with people, and that's okay. If it doesn't resonate with you, you can let it go. The first thing that it brought up in my mind, so I had a teacher that I really loved. His name was S. Michael Wilcox. I think you can find it somewhere online, but he talks about the concept of, he calls it the holding place. And he was talking about when he was younger, his dad abandoned his family. And he grew up with so much resentment, so much hurt, he just couldn't get over it. And, he kept basically, saying the prayer of, give me forgiveness, give me forgiveness. And he kept getting the answer, the time is not right. You're not ready for it yet. When it's ready, it will be ready, but you can't, you literally can't. And he just kept going through this. And then he said one day he was, older and married, and he had his 2 young boys playing out in the yard. And he says he saw, he's just feeling so much love in this moment, and seeing his cute little boys playing and loving each other, loving on him, loving on his wife. And in that moment, he had this thought, this is what your dad missed out on. And he says in that moment, it was just like instant forgiveness. And he felt so bad for his dad because what he had lost was so much, bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. But he said, until he had his own kids and he had that beautiful moment, he literally wasn't capable of understanding that lesson. And he says, he calls it, God carved out a holding place in his heart for him to have that understanding. Until that place was there, it wasn't time. And that wasn't his fault. It's just he hadn't had enough life experiences to get there. Also, and once again, these are going to be kind of weird stories, but because I think I've said, I've heard a lot of near-death experiences, and these were just dreams, so take them for what they were. But I kind of had this dream that I was a spiritual guide or something. Like I was just a witness. I wasn't like doing anything. But I was told to watch this spirit, and they went through a life where, he was basically a murder victim. And it's like, oh, that looks awful, doesn't it? Now do you want to see the full story? And what it had turned out is this person had been the murderer as well. And basically he had felt so bad for the victim that he'd chosen to come back and live the life where he was the victim. And he pulled full circle, and he understood the full thing. And then another one, and this is another one that might hit people the wrong way, and that's okay. Feel free to reject it if you need to. But I was watching a documentary about a guy who was in prison, who had basically, now it was manslaughter rather than murder, but basically his life had gone off the rails, and, he killed a bunch of kids in a car accident when he was driving drunk. And basically the father had found a way to reach out to him. They communicated, and this guy had turned his life around. He was talking to other people, getting them to turn their lives around before they went through something horrible like this. And I just had this for, with a grain of salt because it's just the feeling I had. But I had this image of all of this family agreeing to come down and be the people who got hit because they knew how important it was for this guy, one, to turn his life around, and they loved him so much they wanted him to turn his life around. But two, they knew how important it was, the message that he was going to get from this life experience and how many lives he was going to change. And they knew that the impact they could have by playing that role was so huge and so important for so many people that they volunteered for the role. And once again, that's just a thought that came into my mind. It could be wrong. I can't swear that it was true. But even if it is true, I think sometimes it's important to recognize we don't have all the facts. And sometimes if we had all the facts, we'd understand every bit of it.
Wow,
Wow.
that's so powerful. And isn't it amazing all the things we didn't know we knew about this topic and all the incredible pearls of wisdom we're bringing out? So yeah, I really acknowledge you and thank you all for bringing out your wisdom and for actually bringing out some of mine too. So thank you.
On my squirrels they've been putting up neon lit billboards all around me, and I'm like, this isn't my hour. That I'm so glad that I was able to be quiet, because man, the stuff that you guys are bringing out is just epic. Mark.
Well, again, what Fran said about there are some acts that are quote unquote unforgivable, but there's a movie out there, Clint Eastwood, called The Unforgiven. And he's an old gunfighter. He's talking to a young gunfighter who had never taken a life. And he says, son, you don't ever want to have that feeling. He goes, because when you kill a man, you take away everything that he is and everything that he could be. Okay. And that hit home for me, that, when, like I said, when I consider, like I said, hurting a child in every way, shape, and form, that's kind of the explanation I tend to use for that, that type of act that's unforgivable, because when you do that, you take away everything the child is and everything they could have become in that moment. Doesn't mean they can't have a quality life. It just, and that would be an unforgivable act to hurt a child. And, just wanted to add that in. So, but Clint Eastwood was, he was trying to tell the young man, you don't want to do that, because the act you would be doing, killing another guy, would be, I've been there, and it's unforgivable, basically. So.
Wise words, Mark. Some of you may know that I'm involved in our local emergency services community, and our volunteer fire and rescue service deals with road crash. And because we're a fairly remote country area, we quite often, whenever we're called out to something like this, we know that we may know the people.
Yes.
And recently we had a young boy of 17 killed in a road crash. And like Mark was saying, the potential that was cut off, and the people that know the people and have to try and work with them are very strongly affected. So say a mental thank you to your emergency services workers, because they care.
And I'm glad you brought that up. One of my clients was in that exact position. And one of the crashes he showed up to affected him so much that he decided he could no longer do that. And the reframe that I gave him, if anybody had to show up for that young man's crash, would he rather want a stranger or somebody that he respected and loved from the community? And you showed up and gave him the service, the respect, the honor, and the love that a stranger would not be able to. And
Thank you.
that little reframe.
Thank you for that. I actually managed to use that one for our guy who was absolutely devastated. That, you know, to have somebody who knew him and loved him there when he passed was the best thing for everybody except him.
Yep. So that's why I do what I do, because sometimes those words just come out of my mouth and I'm like, not sure where that came from, but there you go. Like I say, my squirrels have been building billboards going. So I've got 4 minutes to run down some of the things I wanted to share with you guys on this. And some of it was covered, but I'm just going to go through what I wrote down. And one of them is remembering forgiveness isn't for them primarily. It's for you. And you can forgive them in your mind without them having to know it or accept it or reciprocate it or anything. You don't have to carry that boulder just because you know you can. The other one is protective empathy and understanding that you don't know why they did what they did. You don't know what day they had. You don't know what set it up. You don't know what word triggers you said that you were unaware of. And so as long as it wasn't done in angry malice from you knowingly, you can allow that to be easier to let go. In the case where the other person is no longer around, they passed or something like that, there's a protocol that we use, 3-chair, that I've often used to have people in their mind go through and ask for forgiveness. And one of the things I like to ask them is if they could talk to you, how long would they expect you to have to feel bad about this? And more times than not, the answer is you've beat yourself up enough. Wayne Dyer said, you can never get sick enough to make somebody else healthy. You can never stay sad enough to make somebody else happy. You have to live the best life that you can, do the best that you can to make the world a better place. The other one was remembering that when this happened, you did the best you could. We are continuously learning. There was a point in your life where you didn't know how to operate a spoon. You've advanced. You've learned things. You're not the same person you were. And the last one that popped up was, what part of the recording that you keep playing is actually true? Is the recording that you keep playing over and over actually real? How much have you added to it to either justify your position or justify beating yourself up over the situation? Like you pointed out, a couple of you guys, like you go back to the person and you apologize and they don't even remember it. It meant nothing to them, but in your recording, oh my gosh, they're out there in the universe going, this person sucks. I can't believe they did this 10 years ago. And you've been playing that recording over and over and over and over and drinking that poison, that energy repeatedly for 10 years. Only to find out they forgot about it right after it happened. Their recording of it was, they were a jerk, whatever, on with my life. But that also proves here we are. Holy cow. The second hour went by just like that. We're at the top of the hour. One thing I do want to throw at you guys, other than the fact that I love and adore you, these conversations, the information that comes out of these, wow. Wanted to share something with you. A buddy of mine's son has written a book, a cookbook, available on Amazon called Take Your Taste Buds on a Journey. Take Your Taste Buds on a Journey. I actually ordered my own copy. The author's name is Spencer Duncan. And it's a pretty cool little cookbook. A lot of different recipes, a lot of different little things, but they're not overly complicated, which is amazing. Because there are plenty of cookbooks out there that are, you know, if you've got this amazing chef's kitchen with $3 billion worth of equipment, you can make this little item. Yeah, that's not what he does. So check that out. Other than that, love you guys. Thanks again for sharing your precious commodity of time on this platform. I appreciate you more than I have the vocabulary to share. Hope to see your smiling faces back here in 7 days when I'll be back in Dallas and we'll have my normal background. But right now I'm so happy to share it with these two. Look at there.
Night, guys.
It's great that you had such company today. A live audience.
A live audience,
I know.
yes.
So cool.
Live and in color.
Howdy,
right.
Cyber family.
Good night.
Love you guys.
Hey, Mom, you did pretty good at TJ.
Aw.
Aw.
Yeah, he's a keeper. I think y'all did good. Don't throw him back.
Cool.
All right, guys, the check's in the mail. Appreciate you. Just like we rehearsed. No.
Don't throw him back like it's a fish.
All right. See you back here in 7.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, TJ.
Oh, and YouTube. Thanks, guys.